Good noon, everyone. I hope you all have seen I commented on your submissions. And if you have any question and query, you can write there as well. You can email me. And we'll continue this. Let me give you an overview of what we are doing right now and in the upcoming days. So it's like kind of what we start, we do not leave it right there. So let's say thesis statement. We started with it. And we'll continue the journey. We'll take this along with us within the whole journey. Because I understand you all are in the first year of your PhD career here, right? So I'm not expecting you all, for instance, have already the sense of, let's say, your results, right? Let me take this particular, I showed you yesterday as well, this particular structure. So I understand totally that we don't have findings right now, right? Because we just started maybe, or we are still in the phase of methodology or literature review. That's fine. So when we'll go to these sections, I'll show you samples from the book. You don't have to write these sections and submit. Understandable? Yeah, because you might not have a discussion section right now because the results you'll get maybe after a year, or you're just in the coursework phase at the moment, and that's pretty comprehensible. So we'll take this thesis statement and mostly throughout this journey by next week, what I'm expecting. So let's say at least next Monday we have an assignment due, this coming Monday. And the assignment should not be that long. It's like a continuation of your thesis statement. You submitted a thesis statement where you mentioned the problem statement and what you're doing, right? Now, if you add the literary review, other resources that you are willing to use, whether in the form of quotation, summarization, or paraphrase, if you add that, that might be in total then 500 plus words, like the kind of size we do in the book. Understandable what I'm saying? Yeah. So when we continue this journey, I'll get to know more about your language, expression, flow, and whether structural or linguistic. Make sense? So we'll not have a complete research paper, definitely in 15 days, that's insane. But at least we'll have something, a few pages, and we'll work on that. So next Monday, it's not the final assignment. I call it first draft. I'll open that slot in Canvas where you can submit. We'll get there. I'm just giving you an overview what we are going towards. So first draft, why? Because after your first draft, we'll have 3 individual conferences, which means I'll meet all of you in person, one-on-one, or in groups. Let's say 3 persons in groups. 3 because actually with one student I'll be meeting at once. 3 because it's an 18 students class, so let's say 15s are regular, so I would do 3 meetings, that means 5 students in 1 meeting. Mathematically, make sense? Yeah? So I'll meet all of you individually with this first draft. And we'll discuss vocabulary, language, whatever confusion you have, query you have, on that first draft. I'll give you feedback in person. All good? And after that first draft feedback session, on the 5th of June, there is another deadline. You'll submit the same thing with the edited version that we'll discuss during the individual conference. And individual conference we'll do in Zoom. So we both can share our screens. Whatever I can suggest, we can note down the feedbacks and we can have the doc file opened in our computers. Make sense? That's the first step. And the same thing will work on the 5th of June that will submit as a second draft, or you can say a final draft. Now definitely the final draft won't be the whole paper, but only perhaps this first box. Any confusion, query, question? That's the objective we have for this course. So yesterday we started with thesis statement, and we'll continue this. Perhaps we'll end here. That's the maximum learning outcome we can bring. I'll talk about the theories and language and samples from the book and from other resources for these boxes. But within these 15 days, I'm sure it would be impossible for you to generate your own paper for these boxes and sections. Make sense? So you don't have to submit anything for this part, except classroom practice and whatever samples we'll provide and group discussions and things like that. All good? Cool. So let's move on. Today we'll talk about sentence flow. That we use in every section. We maintain, usually, grammatically speaking. I'll also talk about the structural pattern later in today's class. Grammatically, this is what we know as flow. What is sentence flow? When we have an old to new progression. We'll see samples. What do I mean by old to new progression? Transition signals, you might have watched a few videos in Canvas. It's in the pre-class section box. Transition signals are like connectors. However, although any sentence connectors, moreover, you all are aware of it. So when to use it, to what extent we can use it, which is a wrong transition signal to use. So those are the factors we have to keep it in mind when we are overdoing it or we are not doing it at all, and how it bridges your sentences for a better flow. Semicolons or other punctuations as well. I won't say comma is a sentence connector, that's a clause connector. So when to use semicolon and those kind of rules. We have a grammar class next week, so I'll not discuss today this part, but we'll see these things. After this language approach, I'll also talk about the structural pattern for introduction section. And the purpose is to develop our sentence flow. That's the purpose. So let's see how we maintain flow or old to new progression. First of all, we repeat the keywords. Secondly, we use demonstrative adjectives. And thirdly, we use pronouns like he, she, they, it, or demonstrative adjectives like this and that. Let's have a look at an example. Some particles are elusive. Such particles, second sentence. I'm starting with small sentences, then we'll go to academic papers, and we'll try to find out what kind of scenario we see in academic papers. Such particles, that's a keyword repetition. That's not word. It's over here. We repeated the keyword, particles. Oh, good? Quite easy. Demonstrative adjective. An important custom in Ethiopian culture is the coffee ceremony. This is often practiced. And this style, demonstrative adjective, as a flow, you all have used, or many of you might have already used in the thesis statement that you submitted already, as I was checking yesterday. I have a question before I move on. How many of you could see the comments and couldn't see the comments yet? See as in read. You studied the comments. So the raising hands, they studied. No, okay. Please, did you study? Yeah. Who could read the comments I provided? Because I provided long comments, so I cannot call it C, because you have to read a lot. And who couldn't? Okay, fine, no worries. So it's, I would request whenever you get time, get an overview of it. That would help. After demonstrative adjectives, as I was saying, we use also pronoun that refers to the previous sentence, that is the noun, right? A veil covers the woman's head and often much of her face, period. She may also, so this is pronoun that is referring back. So whenever you can create flows in every paragraph that refers back, constant back and forth, that means you're developing flow. So these are simple, pretty examples. Now let's see a larger context, and then we'll go to the sample papers or scholarly articles or papers from the book. Someone would like to read it out loud for me? Anyone volunteer? No one wishes to volunteer?
Farmers try to provide optimal growing conditions for crops by using soil additives to adjust soil pH. Garden lime or agricultural limestone is made from pulverized chalk and can be used to raise the pH of the soil. Clay soil, which is naturally acidic, often requires the addition of agricultural lime.
Thank you. Your name is Namdi. Thank you. So the first problem, can anyone find out what first problem we see here? It does not have a good flow, let me tell you that. Now we have to find out why. Any observation? Based on just what we said right now. The sentence flow, the first rule is it has to be old to new progression. You introduce what we already know, what the reader already knows. After that, you introduce new topic. You do not start with something new. For instance, the second sentence, I highlighted. Have a look at the screen. So we have a new word here, soil pH. So it's a technical term. I'm expecting definitely those who are experts in that field, they would know it. So it's not the first sentence, the first clause or head subject or head noun in the sentence. It's the object. You started with something that we all will understand. Make sense? Farmers try to provide optimal growing conditions, blah, blah, blah. And you ended with a new word. The first sentence is cool. The second starts with a different subject. Now you're losing the flow. You started, if we start with garden lime or agricultural limestone, so now it's neither repeating keywords, nor it's referring back and forth. Suddenly you get a hit. It's kind of like a roadblock. Other way around, if we say in this way, this is the rewritten version. Someone else would like to read it out loud? As Namdi has already contributed, someone else. Yeah, go ahead, Sharon.
Farmers try to provide optimal growing conditions for crops by using soil additive to adjust soil pH. One way to raise the pH of the soil is an additive made from pulverized chalk called garden lime or agricultural limestone. Agricultural limestone is an often added naturally acidic soil such as clay soil.
Thank you, Sharon. So we can see here the subject that was used here has been placed as an object in the next sentence, in the rewritten version or the edited version, right? So we have now garden lime or agricultural limestone, not as a subject in the second sentence. So that's a better flow. Because you're repeating the keywords. You ended with soil pH, and the next sentence starts with one way to raise this, the pH of the soil, is an additive made from blah, 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 blah. And when you ended with agricultural limestone, the next sentence starts with a repetition of keywords. That's fine. Now we already know what is agricultural limestone. Now it's not new to us in the third sentence because it has been already explained in the previous. So now it has become old. So that's how we progress, old to new progression. Make sense? Do you understand what I'm saying? Now let's see a sample from the book. If you're having the hard copy, then it's page 41. And if it's not a hard copy, then page 51 if you are using per user. We'll go to task 19. It starts on page 41 and ends on page 42. Only the first one, not B, A. Task 19A. The task is a silly task. I'm expecting everyone can get the task right away. So we'll just do it verbally. You don't have to write anything. about the filling up these gaps. We'll talk about O to new progression. That's the purpose. The purpose is not to fill up the gaps. Yet, I'll ask you verbally right away. Can you find out which linkers would be perfect for these gaps? In just 60 seconds would be enough. It's a few sentences. Take a minute. While, however, moreover, furthermore, therefore, whatever, connect as you think will be perfect fit for these gaps. There are 3-4 gaps, right? Only? How many gaps do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. All good? If you're done, you have to share with your peers. The person with you, beside you, could be your group mate. Before sharing it with me, I want to have a confused state of class. If there is any conflicting answers among the peers. Could be, someone might think of something else, so that adds a value. Yeah, you can share. Yeah. Just share the answers of these gaps with your peers. You got it?
My logic is the first sentence introduces the
Yes.
situation. And the second sentence
There are 4 gaps.
goes more
Only
specific about
option A. We don't go to the next passage. Only one passage. Option
Asking us to
A.
write a linker in the very second sentence. I
Okay.
don't know what to write.
Option
There
A.
can be n number of linkers that will like connect these sentences. However, maybe and this and that.
I think the transition can be phrases.
Yeah. Because this is an example. Not expected to do so. Okay, for example. Simple one. Okay, just glanced.
Done? No.
This is lecture.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So the second sentence there is a comma here. So we need to find out the division between this half sentence and this.
Why it is recognized?
There
Can-
is debate.
So there will be a why.
And just 4 gaps, just make it quick.
So I think the second one is although.
You don't have a group mate?
Although or why?
You can discuss with me. Do you mind if I join you as a member? Huh? Okay, you can, it's fine to have hesitations. You can join with them or them. Yeah, so, sorry, you should not feel left out.
Okay, we're still thinking about the last two.
Yeah.
And
This will be thus for this
Done? Connectors are confusing? Yeah? You have any questions? Done? Cool. Awesome, Namdi. Thank you.
especially if there is a
So let's
I think the second one. I think this one.
just giving a few more seconds to the other groups, and meanwhile I can just share something on screen. Always look into these modules whenever I submit something, resources to study or resources to watch. Before or after the class. If you're too busy before the class, fine. Just letting you all know that all the resources, whether in the form of website, PDF, or videos, will be in Canvas. And you cannot access them after the course ends. So in whatever way you want to preserve it, go for it. And in this particular section about coherence, cohesion, flow, and also transition signals, I have provided 4 videos. In the last resources to study, for instance, we have thesis statements based resources. If you click, you'd see a few resource links like this. Let's get back. So here we are. So the first group we finished Namdi, right? And I forgot you. Sorry. Aruna. What's the first one? Let's talk about the first gap.
In that regard,
The first one? In that regard. Okay. So it has been documented that individuals in an organization may voluntarily carry out tasks that are not part of the regular job duties. That's the first sentence. It's also in the form of G2S. Yesterday I was talking about it. General to specific. Let me write the full form. Right? So we have a general sentence. And if you can see the last sentence, or let's say this one, OCB, alternate progression, that means, because OCB is not introduced in the first sentence. First sentence is something that you know, general, and then it moves towards specific. So it's a reverse pyramid structure, as we have seen in the structure slide as well. Blank, individuals may go beyond the call of duty. So what do you mean by beyond or not part of regular job duties? That is explained in the next sentence. Anyone who has something else in mind?
We thought it's, for example, individuals may go about.
Okay, anyone else? Thank you.
For this.
For example? For this?
Yeah, that's what I thought it was.
For example is the answer. Thank you who said for example, and thanks to the others as well, because it's good to have this confused discussion. Here they are giving an example, the author or the authors are giving an example. What do you mean by regular job duties? It means individuals may do this and that. There's a list. We can see a list. Because after, for example, we usually see a list. And the list is to help co-workers, to prevent problems, to volunteer this and that. So for example, would be perfect. In that regard, won't be wrong. It connects in a way. But I would say, for example, makes more sense. But it's not wrong if you say in that regard, individuals may. That also makes sense. But that's 3 words. So if you have to be precise, for example, it would be better. Okay? For this, it's not a linker in a way. So I would suggest, I mean, it makes sense what you actually wanted to say, because for that, in that regard, or for this, for example, you all meant, for example. The meaning was, for example, then why don't you use for example? Right? For example, individuals do this and that. This behavior is intended to help others. What do you call this structure? If you remember, demonstrative adjective. For alternate progression sentence flow, we use, we repeat the keywords, we use demonstrative adjectives. This behavior is intended, blah, blah, blah. The next sentence. Now we are gradually moving to the gap, right? The general context has already been said. So what is the best response to this blank?
although,
Namdi said although. Namdi and Aruna. Anyone else would like to say something?
Because of this,
Let's make it as shorter as possible. If you don't have 1 word, we will use 2 words. If we don't have 2 words, we'll use 3 words, but we do not increase words if it's not necessary. We can use 3 words. I'm not saying we cannot if we don't have 1 word. No other response? Everyone agrees?
While we can also.
Correct. While, but although is also correct.
Also, it sounds
Same meaning. Although it is recognized, while is also correct. Perfect. This debate. So try to scrutinize the subjects or head nouns of every sentence. You see the way the flow is being maintained. Yeah, that's how this debate. We also need, we call it the head noun after demonstrative adjectives. So which nouns will you use? You cannot just say this is further complicated. Because if you use this is further complicated, then you're creating the confusion in a higher level. We don't know what this is. Then it will, you'll get a feedback from the editor or supervisor like, your sentences are not connected. So it's not about only the demonstrative adjectives, but also the noun you use after demonstrative adjectives. Make sense? For instance, in the previous sentence we saw this behavior. We use a noun. Right? I have seen many students writing like this. This is intended to help others. Now what this is? You know what I mean? So that's very obvious. Perhaps we think it that way, it's in our mind, but we might not write it while writing. So just be careful about it, using the nouns with the demonstrative adjectives, a proper noun. This debate, so we are getting to the genre of the writing, as we discussed yesterday. It's kind of like an argumentative, right? Because there's a debate. Most OCB research, now we can use this in subject because it is now no more a new word or a phrase. It has already been introduced, so that's old to new progression. Focused on Western cultures, blank, whether these research findings can extend to other cultures not. What's this blank? You all agree, however? Perfect, wow. So when we use however, do we know that? We'll try to use it as less as possible, by the way. In introduction or literature review, that's the place where we use it. Sometimes in abstract as well. It's the correct answer, by the way, here. It's used to mention gap. The research gap that your paper is going to address. However, something is missing. That means this paper, this essay, this research will occupy or fill up that gap. So that means when you are using it 4 or 5 times in an essay, you are certainly going to confuse the readers, what's your gap? Use it as less as possible so that whenever we see it as a reader, we get it. Oh, this is your gap. That means. So this is your main thesis. This is what you want to fill up. So use it as less as possible. Oh, good? We'll see more examples of however, how it mentions the gap. I'll also show you examples where we have multiple howevers, then how you find out gaps, or you get confused or not. We'll see those samples too in today's class. However, whether these research findings can be extended to other cultures or not, there's no or not, is not clear. The final blank. Okay, anyone else? Does. Anyone else?
further.
Just you want to leave it blank? Okay, let's see. Is not clear. Suggesting a need to investigate OCB. If you want to leave it blank, you have to get out of this. Then you don't need a comma as well. In that, yeah. You can directly continue it.
No, comma.
You need a comma? How many, where the sentence start?
Because
most OCB research has focused on this. We have a semicolon. However, it's not clear.
If you read two words before clear and 2 words after clear.
Now the sentence would be too long if you don't want to use any linker. Then it's fine. You can. Yeah.
It's not on the start of the sentence.
Now, sure, yeah, I understand what you say. So the sentence started actually from here, right?
Start with a long sentence is not good, but if you end with a long sentence.
Suggesting a need to investigate something.
If I put it in at the
Yeah,
end
you
of-
can get rid of the blank if you want.
Or there could be other way, like you can use a period. It suggests a need to investigate. That's also fine. Thus is also correct. Thereby is also correct. And if you don't use any linker, that's also correct. Make sense? Then actually we're using suggesting. Suggesting becomes a non-finite verb. We'll also talk about where we can use non-finite verbs. So the role of non-finite verbs, where we can use non-finite verbs.
The suggest also kind of indicates the relationship of cause and the effects, right?
Sorry?
I mean, suggest that the verb itself is kind of indicating a relationship of cause and effect.
Correct. Yeah. It suggests a need to investigate. So something, because they have just mentioned the gap. So now what will be done in the future, that's what is being suggested in this sentence. But we are using ing form as a non-finite verb, not as a main verb like suggest. If you want to use suggest, then you have to use this suggests. Then you can use present simple form as well. Yeah, or it suggests. Or this gap suggests. Let's use a noun, right? Because you mentioned the gap here. Whether these researchers can be used in other cultures or not, that's the gap. So if you want to use a period, then it's better to use this. Gap suggests that. Then we use a head noun after this demonstrative adjective. All good? So we got a pretty good idea of old to new progression. Yeah? Now let's move on to a bigger passage. Page 349. Just give me a second to get that page.
Three,
329 in the book.
341.
341? Per user? Thank you. Correct, yeah. So this passage, before we move on to this passage, I want to share these three moves with all of you. We have it in the slide. So in any introduction section, basically there would be three structural divisions. There are more internal divisions that we'll talk about in the next class on Monday. Today we'll talk about move 1, move 2, and move 3. This is the way I'm dividing it in three structures. Not the linguistic sentence connectors, but the overall structure of the whole paragraph. And when we read this 341 passage, we'll try to find out where is move 1, where is move 2, where is move 3. Where doesn't mean one sentence, could be a section. Let's say you located sentence 1 to 12 is move 1. Now what is move 1 when we talk about the background, context? What is move 2? The second move of any introduction section or literature review section is niche. We all understand what we mean by niche? Anyone who knows can share with the class? What is niche? Niche is the gap. You mention your gap, you introduce your gap in the second move. And the second move are 4 kinds. Now look at the slide. The 4 kinds are, your gap could be move 2, 4 kinds like. First, it could be a counterclaim. Or it could just indicate a gap, not a counterclaim. Or it could just raise a question or make an inference. Fourth option, it's just continuing a tradition. So your paper, either making an inference, what already exists, it raises a question on something that already exists, or It's continuing a tradition. Something has already been invented, discussed, and now you are processing it to the next level. That's also a gap. Gap doesn't mean finding flaws. That's why I'm sharing these 4 kinds. Whenever we say niche or move to or gap, we mean any 4 of this could be counterclaim of a previous existing knowledge. All good? Or you could raise a question or a missing information on the existing knowledge. Not always it has to be a counterclaim. All good? So these are the 4 kinds of niche that is also known as gap. Just to understand how these examples look like, can you go to this page, task 12, page 349.
We don't have it here. Page 349 would be in this book, let's say 360. You got it? In per usual, if you type 361, it will take you to the page. Just type on the box 361. Then we have these 8 samples, 8 examples. So what we have to do, these are all gap statements. Different kinds of gap statements, niche statements. So now we have to find out among these 8, which one is counterclaiming, which one is raising a question or making an inference, which one is adding a missing information, which one is continuing a tradition, not counterclaiming the existing knowledge, but taking it ahead. So among these 8, you just have to write A, B, C, D, E. Let's say the first one should be B, or the third one should be D. What do I mean by A, B, C, D? If you go to the slide, or 1, 2, 3, 4. Make sense? And then we discuss with each other and then with the class. The same pattern. So we'll try to find out these 4 kinds in those 8 examples. Instruction clear? Yeah? Any question, confusion? After this, we'll read a passage and we'll try to find out this in a passage. But before going to an essay, let's practice with exact sentences. And if you go to the previous page, they have described this book. There's 4 kinds. Stronger to weaker gap. For instance, counterclaim means something is wrong, right? Indicating a gap means something is not wrong, but something is missing. So that's less stronger. Raising a question means it's less stronger than the previous 2 that we just talked about. So something is unclear, or you want to make a new inference, but you're not counterclaiming or saying that that research is flawed, or the previous existing knowledge is full of errors. Continuing a tradition is adding something new in that field. We all got the page number? Anyone needs any help? And once you're done, discuss with your peers.
Second is it raising questions or is it going to
Suggest that most are flaws in this process. It's
count? It's indicative. Yeah, it's indication. Question?
You can join anyone if you want. That'd be better if you group us. You can join them or them. Where you're from. Shravan, would you mind just discussing together?
Yeah, we can.
What's continuation? Six with a K in the question. Maybe indication or ocean. So it's a new session.
False assumptions. So it's
And it discontinued because you missed it.
You want to do so?
Done? No questions? It wasn't working. Now it's works. First, second, third, it's like this. It's a nice toy. Let's discuss if you're done. Yeah? Let's go. The first one. This finding suggests that the number of co-authors might affect the self-citation rate. C or 3. We all agree with that? Yeah? Right. So it's making an inference because of the verb suggest is hinting that. The second one. However, in all 3 cases, blah 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 was flawed. Because of the word flawed. So it's the first one. Because they are very straightforward and strictly saying something is flawed. Number 3, one discipline that has been neglected.
Yeah.
Very good, gap. Something that has been neglected. So gap or missing. The second option in move 2. Studies so far, the fourth one.
Question.
Raising a question because it's literally a question. And we'll talk about it, by the way, that I personally do not prefer an interrogative sentence as a question. So you'll see in my slide, in this today's slide, in the latter of ones, where I have provided some examples how we can change this into assertive sentence, but the question will be still there. But we will not be using question mark sentence. Like, let's say we can use, it is a question whether self-citations pay or not, period. That's how I would prefer it to be written. The fifth one, it would be therefore interesting to have further information. Yeah, the last one. Correct. Awesome. Brilliant. 6, that said, little is known.
Yeah.
We all agree? Awesome. Yeah, little is known as gap. 7, so false assumptions, that's a very strict booster that has been used, so it's counterclaim. 8, yes, the last one.
In the third one, it says making an inference. Isn't making an inference mean giving the author's opinion? So is it something unclear?
Number 3 is,
C.
oh, this one you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
It says making an inference.
Yeah.
Inference is giving the author's opinion, right? Adding the author's opinion is that?
Inference means we are not summarizing others' opinion, we are adding our own perspective.
So why is it something unclear?
Where it is, which is unclear.
It says something is unclear.
In the book? Yeah? No, that's not about inference. It means, let me take it there. So there are 4 kinds of gaps we can talk about. First, either something is wrong. Try to understand that. So that means you're fixing whatever is wrong.
So like completely opposite.
Yes, something is wrong and you're approaching as you have to fix it. Or something is missed by other researchers. They are not flawed, they are not wrong. They didn't touch it, they didn't talk about it. So there's a gap remains. So you want to fill up that gap by adding your knowledge, not by refusing existing knowledge. Make sense? Something has been done, but not clear. That's why you're raising a question. You're not refusing the existing research data, but something is unclear. And your paper will make it better or clearer. Make sense? Or make it more comprehensible. Then it will not be any more unclear.
after reading your paper, whatever was unclear in the previous knowledge, the clarity will be visible. Now, all good? You got it? And that's just continuing a tradition, not at all finding flaws in the previous ones. Yeah? Now let's get back to where we were, page 341, right? Yeah. This passage, it has 17 sentences. And we just have to find in these 17 sentences where is move 2 and where is move 3. That's it. What is move 3? Move 3 is what you are proposing. How will you occupy this gap? How will you do it? I'm not saying we will have as move 2 all 4 of these. You can have any one of these, right, in move 2. So now the first thing is find out this move 2 or any one of these 4 kinds in this passage. Could be one sentence, could be 1, 2, 3 sentences even. So where we have the gap statement in this passage, in these 17 sentences, it's task 2 possibly, right? Task 1, yeah.
Can you repeat the move 1, 2, 3 again?
Yeah, sure. Sure. Let me take you to the slide. So move 1 is when we talk about the background. And move 2 is when we talk about this, any one of from these 4, any gap. And move 3 is when you write, this paper will examine, this study aims to this. The objective of this paper is, let's say your thesis statement, the way you wrote. That's move 3. Make sense? Because you are proposing how will you fill up the gap. And if you find move 2, then also try to mention which one goes the best with this move 2. Is it making an inference? Is it mentioning a gap? Or is it counterclaiming? discuss with your peers. Move 3 is easy to find out because that's kind of like the thesis statement like this. The primary aim of the research is this. That's move 3. So let's focus on move 2 now. So share with your peers. Done? You both can discuss. Done. Not done yet? Research proposal. That's my wild guess. Perhaps that's what it said. Now you can read. Does it make sense? If you read research proposals?
Yeah.
Okay. Or could be paper. Research paper is RPS.
Yeah.
But if you read the whole book from top to end, actually they have mentioned what RP is somewhere earlier. And then they use abbreviation in the latter chapters. It's a very task-based book, which is nice, this particular book. Start discussing with your peers, guys. We just have to find move 2. And there will not be move 2 in every place. It will be at one place. It's not like move 2 is in the beginning and in the end. It doesn't happen like that. Gap is mentioned at one place. Could be in the beginning, could be in the end, could be in the middle, but it should be mentioned at one place. You situate the context, you mention the gap, you hit on it. This is the way I'll fill up the gap. That's it. Structurally. Make sense? Why aren't you guys discussing with your peers? Silent classroom.
Hard to digest.
Okay, let's make it out loud. Who found out where is move to? Please. Namdi said 16. So you're saying sentence 6, 7.
Can be the bottom.
Okay, let's say it could be, okay. I'm not giving my opinion, I'm just listening it out loud. Anyone else who has other sentences? 16, 6, 7, 16, 16. You're also 16? Wow. And, huh? All these three? 6, 7, 16? Okay. Which, same with whom? With him? With him? Okay. So it's, yeah, that's how we need a head noun before adding a pronoun or demonstrative adjective so that I understand which same. Let's see. What is in sentence 6, 7? First thing I was about to discuss in this particular passage, one confusion it might create, because I said in the beginning of this class, the use of however, and this is an exception. That's why I said I'll show you an example of an exception, like we have however in the third sentence, which is not a gap. Which is not a gap of this paper. They use however to mention gap of the previous argument, not a gap of the paper. Try to understand this. Let's say you want to define what is road rage. You understand the word road rage? When people use slangs, show middle fingers while driving. You'll see many people doing this and that. And when they drive in a very rough way, in Chicago mostly you'll see it, in Indiana less. The possibility is less. So road rage is when people use slangs, call names while driving and they overtake each other, so that's called road rage. So if you want to define road rage, well, I'm saying it because we have a passage after this also on road rage. So if you want to define road rage, it's difficult to define. What is it? Is it cultural? In many countries, it might be cultural. In my country, I would say it's cultural. Yes, it is cultural. It's part of a tradition almost. I'm from Bangladesh. So it's pretty obvious, you'd see it everywhere and no one gets offended with this. That's the scenario there. Now, here it might be different. In many other places, it might be different. So when I'm defining road rage, it could be cultural, it could be psychological behavior, it could be many things, socio-political. So there could be many versatile definitions. So, and when you are countering each definition, you can use however actually. That's why I'm giving this reference. Something that it would be easy to digest and we all might agree. So let's say you put one definition. Road rage is blah, 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 blah. And then the next sentence you're writing, however, something is gap in that definition. That definition is not totally acceptable to you, so you can counter it. You're moving to the next definition. However, road rage can be defined in this way also as a cultural element. For example, in my reference, as whatever I just have said, in my country, if you go, it's pretty obvious and kind of like a cultural thing. So everyone is using it. So in the fourth definition, maybe you don't want that definition as well. So you're giving another counter, however. So you can use multiple howevers in certain situations. Make sense what I'm saying? So here they used however to reject the previous one, but doesn't mean the third sentence is actually the gap of this paper. That's why I have this discussion. So let's go to sixth point. Thus it seems that group-directed criticism might sometimes provoke negative reactions from both theoretical and practical points of view. It is important to understand, blah, blah, 6 and 7. One key factor that determines, I would say sentence 1 to 13, they're actually talking about the background. They're reasoning it. It's also called grounding. Grounding is not gap. We'll talk about grounding in the next class, by the way. Just giving you some heads up, what is grounding? Today we're talking about the structures. When we talk about the linguistic approach of every sentence, it happens in this way. We put our grounds, we frame some logic and reason, it's called framing, and then we do forwarding. Oh, before forwarding, we do borrowing. We'll talk about it on Monday, by the way. It's called rhetorical moves. So, and it's not a structural pattern, it's in every sentence. That's why it's difficult to discuss right now. We don't have samples at the moment in front of you. When we'll have samples, you get it. What is grounding? When you put your grounds, and then you frame certain keywords or logic. You do borrowing, means you use other references. You borrow someone's work, someone's definition, some citations. Then you go forward with that. And it is a repeated loop. And after forwarding again, you do grounding. And how it happens, we'll talk about it on Monday. So this is kind of like that. They are grounding their logic. Am I making sense? So sentence 6, I will not say the gap. Rather, sentence 14, 15, 16, according to me, is, you can say the background of the gap is 16. But the gap started from 14. That's the background of the gap, right? So 14, 15, 16, we can say as a combined gap statement, where they're saying what the gap is. For instance, what the gap is there? Something is missing. That's the gap statement. As we just did in the previous task. Either it's a counterclaim, something is missing, raising a question, or adding something new. And we can see there's a gap. Research has not yet investigated. Right? So something is missing. Something has not been done. And we find this exact word only in sentence 16. However, they did not use however. They used although here. That's why I'm saying this is an exception. Usually we see however with the gap statement. Do we get it? Yeah? And sentence 1 to 13, they are actually grounding the logic, framing it, grounding it. Please go ahead.
I think the move to where we make inference sometimes like confusing. Like when you talk about making an inference in move to, there are some previous sentences that
They made a lot of inferences.
Yeah.
Correct. Because
you can classify it as move to there.
why can we classify that as a move to?
Yeah.
Now, the previous inferences they made, that's not the gap they are trying to fill up.
So that doesn't make it move to.
That won't make it move to in that case. The gap of this paper is finally mentioned in 16 where you're saying research has not been investigated, something.
Yeah, but move to has 12 sections.
Yes.
Why we focus just on the gap section of move to? Why don't we?
Move to could be any one of these.
Yeah, so the cases where they make inferences, doesn't that also make it move to?
That's not a gap of the paper they're filling up. That's why it doesn't make the move to.
Yeah, but you said move to has counterclaim.
Yes. If you don't have A, you have B. If you don't have B, you'll have C.
Oh, okay. One
If
of
you
them.
yes.
Okay.
If you don't have C, you'll have D, because you'll see in per usual, the previous page of the previous task, there is a stronger to weaker. So you'll try to make it stronger, the claim. Less stronger, at least weaker. But there should be a claim. And the flow should be like this, stronger to weaker. When you don't have this, then you look for this. If you don't have this, then you look for this. If you get this, done, that's the gap. And if you get a counterclaim, then you don't need to look for other things as well. Now make sense? Yeah, thank you for this question. It's a brilliant question. I should have mentioned it. Yeah. All good? You good to go? Now let's have a look at something easy. Page 74. Like this. Now we're talking about extended definitions. Task 10. We use a lot of definitions in our paper, and mostly are from scientific discipline, and I was reading your thesis statement, so I thought I should add extended definitions and the rules and logic of when we are defining how we define things. And we do it in the introduction section, by the way, right? When we begin writing our essay, we start writing our essay, we mention whatever terms we have, we define that. So definition is part of literature review or introduction. So now what we'll do is, the basic structure of a definition is this, which is pretty obvious, right? We have a term, and then after term we mention a class. And after that, whatever you want to distinguish. Mostly what we do, I have seen many people missing the class section. So we have three things in a definition. A solar cell converts the energy of sunlight into electronic energy. That's also correct grammatically, right? If you do not write the class, is a device. Make sense? That's also grammatically correct. Now it's a pretty simple example. That's why we think we don't need that. That's unnecessary. But when the term will be too complicated, class helps to understand what the term is. Distinguishing characteristics are 4 kinds. The object of the definition. First, it could be historical definition. It could be application-based. Actually, I should not say 4 kinds, it could be unlimited. I'm just giving you 4 examples today. Application-based definitions or component-based definitions or example-based definitions. Now, if you go to per user and you try to find out 4 definitions we have here, task 10, page 84, if you type on the box, it will take you directly on the page. So the first definition is this: a microscope is an optical instrument. So when we say optical instrument, that's the class. After instrument, we have distinguishing characteristics. So now when we say distinguishing characteristics, I'm just abbreviating it, DC, or distinguishing features, DF. It could be historical, it could be application, components, or example. Application as in the way it is used. Whatever you're defining, the way it is used. So now we'll try to see these 4 examples in front of you. Example 1, a microscope. Example 2, pollution is a form. Form is class. We got it? What is class? That is mostly missed. Even while reading your thesis statement, many of you have used terms where you did not include a class. That's why I thought to include this. Perspective is a technique. Technique is the class. Are we getting there? What I'm trying to say? And acrylic plastic is a polymer. That's a class. So we have class in a class is, for instance, is it a question? What's class? A church is a building where we go to pray. The building is the class. Make sense? Got it? For instance, a solar cell is a device. Device is the class. So we often miss this class when we are defining something because we know the definition. So we just directly jumps into it. A solar cell converts the solar energy, whatever. So because this is a simple example, so we get it, but in terms of bigger picture, we might need to mention the class. So what we'll do now, we'll try to categorize these 4 definitions. First of all, read these 4 definitions and try to understand whether they have a G2S format or not, general to specific format or not. And if they have, that's beautiful. Then how did they maintain, even in definition, not in essay. I'm not talking about essay now. Even while defining something, you can maintain G2S, general to specific format. How did they do it? Do they maintain old to new progression, demonstrative adjectives, whatever we have just seen right away, a while ago? So we'll try to look into that. And identify which one is historical definition, which one is application-based, which one is component-based, which one is example-based. The 4 will not have 4 of this. Each 4 has picked up separate style of definition. Make sense what I'm saying? Now just let's read these 4 examples and try to find out which one belongs to which category of definition. It's also written in the instruction, by the way. The definition is discussing components, or is it discussing applications, or is it discussing history or examples? That's what we'll find out. So the first definition is, and in the same pattern, we'll discuss it together, with your peers, then with the class. and this is called extended definition. Because it's a very prime part in many scientific journals and papers, where you define, maybe in the whole page you're defining something.
What is the difference between definition and extended definition?
For example, this is a definition, not an extended definition. Because you're not extending it based on its history, class, components, exercise, applications, and examples. Make sense? When you include any four of these, or the fifth or sixth point you might generate, then it would be an extended definition.
Further defined.
Right. So for instance, road rage, as I was talking about, it might belong to this category. Because I'll give several different examples of road rage. Road rage in India, road rage in Bangladesh, road rage in Chicago. In Indiana, it's different. That would be example based, not history, application, or component based. Make sense? And the way it maintains your flow, that if you have this question, why we need extended definition, actually it gives a purpose for the definition. Why I'm using a definition suddenly. You know what I mean? So it gives the purpose why you brought a term in your paper, or in that paragraph, or in that chapter. When you belong to any of this category, or you can create a new category. That means you're setting up the premises. Something? Yes.
The kind of definition we choose depends on the context we're trying to portray.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
For the kind of definition, the extended definition we choose,
Yeah.
Maybe depend on what kind of context we're trying to set up.
I mean, as a writer, when you're writing, yes, you're free to choose. Let's say if you want to choose a historical approach of defining something, that's also fine. It depends on your topic, on the context, and your goal, where you want to head towards.
So for different concepts in background, we can use either of these definitions.
Yes, even you can blend. You can also blend, because historically you will see some examples change, some definitions change. So you can blend actually history and example. In the scientific discipline, you might add or blend application and history, because the application might have changed over the time. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it was used for something else, now using it for something else. Could we find out the four components in these four examples? Yeah? So let's discuss. The first one, what do you think?
First one,
It belongs to which one? Very good, thank you. So now we got, after reading this, I know the task is quite easy, but now at least I hope you didn't know there could be such various kinds of definitions. Now when you'll be defining something, you'll have it in your mind, at the back of your mind, that was the purpose of it. The second one?
example.
Perfect, right. The third? History. And the fourth?
Applications.
Applications. So always, whenever you're defining something, keep it in mind what's the purpose of it. You can create a new category if you want. I'm not saying there's only 4 categories we have, but think of the category, based on that, prepare your sentences. And next question is, do we have a general to specific format even in the definitions? Did we look into that?
What's your question?
General to specific format or not? What's the format of the definition? Even though they belong to component application or historical, do they maintain G to S formatting, like we see while we read OCB, when we do duties beyond our regular job? So there we saw OCB, the general to specific format, right? You start with the general sentence and then you go deep down and you become very specific. What was that? Got it. Do we have it? We do not have it in every definition. That's why we need to look at another example where we might try to find whether they have it or not. Page 86 in the book, and it's task 16. In per usual, it would be maybe 96. Task 16. Got it. This is what I was talking about, road rage. Page 96, if you type on the box, it will take you there. This is also an extended definition. Since the beginning till the end, we only have 6 sentences. So let's see whether they have the specific, general to specific format or not. Let's read and we'll try to respond. Sentence 1, 2, 3. Question 1, 2, 3. Sorry. You have a few questions in on the next page. So we'll discuss with our peers, question 1, question 2, question 3. We don't need 4 to 6 right now. All good? So you will read the passage and you'll discuss with your peers, question 1, 2, 3.
In extended definitions, is that it giving the general definition and
Then moving or dipping down, going deep down. Yeah.
going down more specific to either one of those?
Yeah.
So is it general to specific in extended definitions?
Yes, in a way, right? Depends on where you end. If you're ending to a specific node, then yes, very good point. Right. You're moving to general specific because you started, let's say, pollution is a form, and then you're giving examples of various, but you're not reaching to a specific conclusion. So in that particular example, perhaps we have the examples of various pollution, but we do not have a specific conclusion.
So here it does G to S, does that always means ending with the conclusion?
Yeah. Now the conclusion do not mean your research conclusion. Every passage has a topic, sentence, and an ending. Like every scene in a drama, every sequence in a film has a starting and an ending. So it's the same. In every paragraph, we need to end somewhere on a specific note. So that's the narrow down format. So if you're not narrowing it down, then we cannot say it has a general specific format. So in all the definitions, I won't say they have it in the 4 of them. Yeah. On the contrary, let's have a look at this example, road rage page. Thank you for this question. It's a brilliant question. Because when you're narrowing it down, actually you're trying to specify it. But I'm expecting, let's say if you say, what's the reader's expectations? After reading this definition, I'm expecting there could be. We don't have it yet here. But the next passage is supposed to be specific. You're heading towards. Are we done? Start discussing with your peers. It's a few sentences. Question 1, 2, 3.
But are these all not examples? This is not as an example. Cultural distinction.
Yeah, for example, here is used to introduce different definitions of language, right? So the topic is definition of language.
Okay.
And then from number 2 to number 3, it's the second definition.
Okay, so in case of if you want to describe it as a mental disorder, this is the definition. If you want to describe it as cultural, this is the definition. Sorry, this is
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, so 3 different.
Done?
One in general and one specific. Okay. I think it is organized intuitively. I think it is organized intuitively because here is the general.
There is a more
then it goes into
specific.
specific.
So,
Then it picks up on the mental disorder and goes into more specific.
Yeah, in all the sentences. What tenses do you see? Same sentence, same kind of tense, or they use past indicator somewhere, or all are present simple? And why do you think you can have changed any tenses there?
Sentences. Oh. Okay, so it leaves the road rage here and then comes to this. No. I think it.
The time is up today, so let's continue from here in the next class on Monday. Good? Right?
This class is still here in person.
Yeah, it will be in person. Now the question is, I need, before you, yes?
We have class on Monday.
Why we don't have class on Monday?
This is Memorial Day.
But classes are not off. Because if classes were off, then it shows me here in this. So Notre Dame keeps it open because, this would be open, this device where my name is there, it says that Monday I have class on that particular time. So it's, you know what I mean?
Okay.
So it's not off, yeah. So we'll have class. Now the thing is, we need something before you come to the class. In per usual page 235, if you go, you'll see this sample that we performed a few classes ago. Maybe the last 2 classes we did this. The acoustic environment contains this and that sounds. Literature review, we saw how previous scholars' citations have been used. You remember? Yeah, in per usual page 235. So I need a similar introduction or literature review, whatever you say it, 500 to 700 words, minimum 500. It should start with your thesis statement that you submitted. Give a title and write a few paragraphs, 500 to 700 words on that title. Based on your thesis statement, you'll continue with it. So I'm expecting this is the first paragraph that you already wrote, right? You submitted already your thesis statement. And the next paragraphs, whether based on definitions, whether based on examples, whether based on summarizing and paraphrasing the scholarly articles, so that I can get at least 1 or 2 pages written by you, and we can discuss whether you have maintained general to specific format or not, whether you have maintained old to new progression or not, what kind of linkers you are using or not. Make sense? I need, in short, an introductory writing on your topic that you'll be submitting. I'm calling it first draft. Make sense? And this is a sample. Sample, why I've said this, because this is what I'm expecting. You'll cite a few people as well. The scholarly articles that you have put in the list, in the Excel sheet, perhaps. You'll summarize and paraphrase and quote. And then you'll reach to certain conclusion as well. All good? So see you on Monday. Thank you.